You are standing in Mitre Street, Whitechapel. A few yards along this road is the entrance to Mitre Square, where on the night of September the 30th, 1888, the Whitechapel murderer claimed a fourth victim, Catherine Eddowes. At 1 a.m. on the same night, the body of Elizabeth Stride was discovered in Dutfield's yard in Berner Street, about 3/4 of a mile from Mitre Square. Within an hour of the first killing, the Whitechapel murderer arrived here, en route to his second murder of that night. Witnesses may have seen him with Catherine Eddowes at around 1:35 a.m. on the 30th of September 1888, a night that was to become known as the double event. Walk along Mitre Street and click on Audio Post 2. This is the entry into Mitre Square. On your left is a warehouse belonging to Williams & Co, and on the right is a picture framing shop owned by Charles Taylor. Next to Taylor's shop are 3 empty premises, and then Haydeman & Co have a general merchant's at number 5 Mitre Street. Caretaker George Clapp, his wife and a nurse are asleep in the rooms at the rear of number 5. Their windows look out over the private yard owned by Haydeman & Co. At 1 a.m. this area is deserted and dark. The only illumination is provided by the few gas lamps along the street and 3 gas lamps situated in Mitre Square. The one single gas lamppost in Mitre Square, in front of the first Keely & Tonge building, was said to be defective and shone only dimly that night. Mitre Square itself is surrounded by high industrial buildings and can be accessed from 3 points. This main entry to and from Mitre Street, a narrow passageway known as Church Passage at the north end connecting the square to Duke Street, and another narrow passage in the west corner linking the square to St James's Place. Mitre Square is a sheltered, deserted, dark space filled with shadows and relatively safe from intrusive passers-by. As locations go, this is the ideal spot to commit murder. The area where Catherine Eddowes was killed is the darkest, most concealed spot in the square, and it's become known as Ripper's Corner. Walk into the square to audio post number 3. Next to Williams & Co are 2 small houses. One is empty, but the other is occupied by off-duty police constable Richard Pearce and his family. Here you can see his gas lamp shining in the first floor window. None of the occupants saw or heard anything during the time the murder was committed. The large west side building owned by Keely & Tonge was shut and empty of people, but inside the north building was night watchman George Morris, who was alert and awake and busy cleaning. PC Edward Watkins was the policeman on duty that night. He was assigned to ward the night beat that included Mitre Street and Mitre Square. This route, the only one to enter the square, took around 15 minutes to complete. At 1:30 a.m. he was in Mitre Square, where everything was calm and quiet, and he witnessed nothing untoward. He had his bullseye lantern on and shone it in every corner. Now continue to Church Passage, to audio post 4. Church Passage was so named because until 1874 St James Church stood on the site now occupied by the warehouse of Horner and Sons, providers of chemical goods. At 1:35 a.m. a man and a woman were seen at the far end of this passage, the Duke Street Church Passage entrance, by 3 witnesses: Joseph Lorend, Joseph Hayem Levy and Harry Harris, who were walking along Duke Street after leaving the Imperial Club. Later at the mortuary, Lorend identified clothing worn by Eddowes as that worn by the woman they saw. PC James Harvey's beat also took him almost into Mitre Square. At approximately 1:40 a.m, 5 minutes after the witness sightings, he walked down the Duke Street Church Passage to this point where the wide mouth of the passage joins Mitre Square. He saw and heard nothing amiss, and so walked back along Church Passage and turned right into Duke Street. Minutes later, PC Edward Watkins returned to Mitre Square via Mitre Street, and at 1:44 a.m. he discovered the body of Catherine Eddowes on the pavement at the rear of Mr Taylor's shop. Watkins raised the alarm by rushing to George Morris, the night watchman, who was cleaning inside the warehouse and had left the second door ajar about 2 minutes earlier. None of the occupants in the square heard any noise or saw anyone. PC Watkins instructed Morris to go and fetch some assistance. Meanwhile, PC Harvey turned onto Aldgate from Duke Street and walked towards Mitre Street. It was then he heard a whistle urgently sounding and saw George Morris fast approaching with a lamp. Morris informed him that a woman had been ripped up in Mitre Square. Continue to the rear of Taylor's shop and to audio post number 5. This low brick and walled gated fence lead to the private yard owned by Haydeman and Co. Rooms where caretaker George Clapp, his wife and a nurse are sleeping are no more than 35 feet from this spot. PC Watkins remained with the body of Catherine Eddowes at the rear of Mr Taylor's shop. Catherine was supine, her skirts pulled up above her exposed abdomen. Her head was towards the wall of Haydeman's warehouse yard, and her feet were pointed towards the carriageway. Her abdomen was open. Her intestines had been pulled out and placed over her right shoulder. A length of about 2 feet was between her body and left arm, apparently by design. She had extensive injuries. Her right ear was cut through, and the tip of the nose was removed. More cuts were inflicted on the eyelids and each side of the face below the eyes, with the throat cut across 6 or 7 inches. Her liver had been stabbed and cut across, and the left kidney actually removed along with some of the womb. The injuries came from a sharp-pointed instrument like a knife, with death caused by catastrophic blood loss. These mutilations were inflicted after death, and were thought to have taken at least 5 minutes. Police would now begin searching the area in the hope of apprehending the perpetrator, and must surely still be in the vicinity. It was during a search that the police made another grim and startling discovery. A part of Catherine Eddowes' apron had been removed and taken away by the murderer. This piece of apron was found at 2:55 a.m. by PC Alfred Long in Gulston Street, a short walk from Mitre Square. The bloodied apron fragment had been discarded in the doorway leading to an apartment complex. PC Long also noticed some freshly scribbled chalk writing on the wall above the apron, which had become known as the Gulston Street Graffitio. PC Long recorded the message as saying, quote, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." The apron fragment is undisputedly linked to the crimes of Jack the Ripper. Whether the graffiti